so we don't know who is there, but if
Yeah.
anybody's there, hello. We are
Hello,
three
everyone.
people,
Yeah.
as you can hopefully see. I'm Dani Ploeger. I will do a little bit of moderation. Most of the talking will probably be done by the two wonderful guests we have here. So before we start off, let me briefly introduce or ask the other two to introduce themselves. We have uh, Jasmine or Yushan Huang, and she is dialing in from Paris. And then we have Jihan Eyo, who is in Kamislo in Rojava, and I am Dani Ploeger. I am in the Netherlands at the moment. So we are in three different places. So maybe Yasmin or Yusan, can you tell me and us who you are and what your
Yeah.
interest is in the topic today?
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for invitation of the Lithuanian National Museum and Danny. And it's my honor to join today's discussion. I am Yushan Huang and currently doing my PhD research at EHESS, the School of Advanced Studies in the Social Sciences in Paris. So I am particularly interested in the Rojava Revolution and its interaction with the gender movement. And currently, my topic, my doctorate topic, explore the practical role of Rojava women in Rojava behind the romanticized imagination.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And Jihan?
Yeah, thank you, Danny, for inviting me to this exhibition, and let me thank the National Museum, Lithuanian Museum, to let us part of this exhibition. I'm Jihan. I'm instructor at the translation department at the University of Rojava, and I met a lot of YPG fighters, and I have some friends within them, and I know somehow about them.
Great. So we will speak about the things you know very soon. I am Dani Ploeger. I'm an artist and also a cultural theorist. I have spent about 4 months in Rojava this year, where I'm particularly looking at the development of technologies in connection with the Rojava Revolution. So anti-capitalist or socialist anarchist technology, if you like, that also touch on issues of gender equality, among others. So maybe we'll move to what we're actually going to talk about today. And I will briefly share my screen here, and then I can show you the presentation. Can you see the presentation now? I think you can, right?
No.
No? Oh, that is disappointing. Oh, right. I still have to. Wait, it's my fault. Here we go. And now you will
Yeah.
soon see it. And now here. Okay. So, as our visitors will probably know, this is a presentation or a discussion in the context of the exhibition Women Warriors in the 19th and 20th Century in Lithuania. Now, one of the points of interest, or maybe the main point of interest, you could say, of this exhibition is how the role of women in armed struggle affects issues and debates and realities of gender equality in everyday life, also in civilian structures. So what we're going to talk about in this discussion and going to explore in this discussion now is very prominent practice of women fighters in the armed forces in the present in Rojava, the autonomous administration in North and East Syria, also known as Rojava. So we are talking about, and I think some of you, maybe all of you will be familiar with this, but just to fill you in very briefly, the Rojava Revolution is a struggle, a revolutionary project that has emerged in the early 2010s when Islamic State or Daesh occupied large parts of Syria. At some points, the Kurdish militias there, among whom the YPG, which we're going to talk about in a moment, fought back and managed to create an autonomous area based on principles of gender equality, ecology, bottom-up democracy, in other words, democratic confederalism, to a large extent also referring to the writing of Abdullah Öcalan. Now, as I said, today we will speak about the YPJ, which is a structure within the Kurdish military forces in Rojava, made up entirely of women. And these are some images that Jihan has provided, and just by means of starting here, we see some images which are mainly official images. You can see that there, YPG, press office, YPG is the male unit here. And then in the other picture here, some women who are active in other parts of the security services. Here on the left, on the top, you see female police officer, traffic police in Kamishlo, and on the bottom, an anti-terror unit, and on the right on top. What is this again? Maybe you can talk about this better, Jihan. I'll hand it over to you right away. What do we see on the right-hand side on top?
Yeah, on the right side, you can see what we here we name HAPAJ. It's in Rojava. The Society Protection Forces. Those women are civilian, so they get armed in the emergency state, whatever their job is. So here you can see them. They are armed, and those who are interested in or can so they go and join this what we named the protection committee within the commune. So they protect or their neighbors.
Right. So these are civilians.
Yeah, civilian. Yeah.
Civilians protecting neighborhoods.
Yeah. Then
yes.
Some of them join. We say YPJ, YPJ, as a Kurdish.
Yes, YPJ. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So let's.
Some of them then join, and some of them maybe they are members, fighters of YPJ, and they are with their families now, and at the emergency state, they join this protection committee within the community and protect their neighborhood.
Great, thank you. So these are civilian units that operate on an irregular basis in case of emergency. Let's move to YPJ, and maybe the first question would be for both of you, very introductory. What is YPJ? And maybe first for Jihan, and I think Yushan will know some things about, or maybe have to tell some things about the history of these units.
Yeah, so Jihan will make a brief introduction first, or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. No, she turned off her. Jihan, are you all right? Are you here? Yeah, I can make a brief
okay, well, maybe you can briefly introduce.
Yeah. So the full name of YPJ is Syrekaniye Parastunajin in Kurdish, so which means Women's Protection Units or Women's Defense Units in English. So on 4 April 2013, the YPJ, as a strictly female-only organization, was founded, whose members fight on the same level as their male counterparts in YPG, the Syrekaniye Parastunajin, the People's Protection or Defense Units. So currently, both units are part of Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, in the autonomous administration of North and East Syria, the Rojava. Yeah, that is a very brief introduction.
Oh, very concise. Is Jihan back? I can't see because I'm only seeing my screen with the
No,
images on it.
I think she turned off her video as well as her audio.
Oh, Jihan, are you still there?
So.
Sorry,
Ah.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I didn't hear anything. Maybe because of the poor connection. Yeah.
Oh, well, Yushan gave a very general introduction to YPG. Yes, YPG, not YPG. She talked about YPG as well, briefly. YPG. Maybe a follow-on question for you, Jihan, because you have friends, relatives who've been active in those units. What is the day-to-day life like? Like, how long do people stay in these units? What kind of things do they do? What is the training like?
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I don't know if my voice is clear to you.
Yeah.
Yes, your voice is clear. Yes. Sorry, I will switch off the image and then I can maybe type. Let me do this. Okay, I guess this Google platform is not very suitable for internet connections that are not very clear. Can you? So you can still not.
It's clear.
It's now it's clear, or maybe it was the screen sharing. Okay, so the question is, maybe could you say something about the day-to-day life for women who work in YPG?
According to the day-to-day, what we name here as education, it's about for all women here. It happened 6 weeks to 6 months. So to me, I joined as well. We got up in the early morning. We do sport. Then we make breakfast together. We have breakfast together. We start lessons, reading books, learn about the women in the history, about the everything, women everywhere, women movements, and then YPG life. If there is like fighting, they are divided into committees and whose turn, like every two. I heard from one of the friends that for 48 hours, they are being changed, the team. So 2 days in the office, 2 days in the front line, like they are being changed. Some of them are drivers. The drivers also are women to take food to the front line. To the teachers, or let's say the lecturers, they are themselves. For example, one of them prepared a lecture, make research, read books, then come to all the friends and have a lesson about specific movement or specific topic, and so on. To me, during my education for 6 weeks, I was teaching Kurdish language and English language. Yeah, and about about the Kurdish revolution history. Also, I prepared such lesson.
So everybody working there is all women. Is there any contact to men at any point on the front line or in any other circumstance?
Yeah. In the front line, they are mixed.
Ah, right, but nowhere else, only on the front line.
Yeah. To the front line that I went, I told you I visited one from 2014. I was member of the youth union. My friend Heavy had her her sister Peyman, and came to Serekaniye, my town, and we went together to the front line. There were two stairs. The first floor, men, YPG, were there. Yeah, we said hello to all of them. We took sweets and drinks to them. Then we go upstairs to the room, and we met all these women. I like to mention their names. We met Havin, we met Farashin, we met Sama, the leader one, with gray braid. Yeah, we met Osgur. She was sister of one of our friend, Muslim friend, sister. And we chatted a lot. We recorded videos. We had fun. It was so nice, but unfortunately, it was the front line with ISIS, and a few months later, there was operation by ISIS. They exploded truck, very big truck, and all were murdered. So
Wow.
I felt so sorry for all of them. Yeah, and I went to Heavis from Amuda. I went to her that time to condole her, and that is about the front line. And they were mixed, as I
Mm.
told you, beside each other, or in two buildings next to each other. Some of them in the downstairs and some of them at the upstairs.
So there is also spending leisure time together. It's not only
Yeah,
within the female
yeah,
units. Okay,
of
okay.
course.
Yeah.
Seeing each
And
other, saying hello, what are you exchanging,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, supplying tools or food or like.
yeah. And how often do people go home to their families? How long do they stay in service?
Yeah, it depends. For example, I remember that time Osgur asked me that she missed her family and asked me if I visit. And that time I visited Muslim family and said hello to all her family. And she was allowed whenever she wants. She can ask her leader Sama. I need to visit my family. She was allowed to visit for 1 week or 2 weeks.
Okay, okay, great, great. And you mentioned, I think, and this is, I mean, in the end, I think the interest of our conversation is to explore a little bit what the relationship is between the existence of these all women's units, which also involve a lot of awareness training and discussion on everyday life outside the military. And I think the first question to start exploring this is, what exactly is this ideological schooling that you mentioned about when it comes to women's rights? Like what are, and I think Yushan will maybe have something to say about this as well, but what are the kind of, what you say, key points around emancipation and women's empowerment that people learn or discuss in those military contexts?
Yeah, Jasmine is clear.
Is you ask me or you ask Jihan?
I'm asking Jihan first, and I think you
Yeah.
might
I
be
think
able to.
you, yeah.
And then I thought maybe you can say something
No,
about the historical
yeah,
development of that, because I think you've studied some of that, right? But I think
yeah,
it's Jihan has been through the training herself, so it'll be interesting to
Yeah.
hear.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, here
please.
not just the equality between gender, uh, just but it is like the case of depressed people, like Kurdish people. Are we studied more about how uh, to work or to seek or ask for our right as Kurdish people, as first, then as women. So. Fighting? You mean fighting? Why they we learn holding weapon, or why
No,
we
no,
fight?
I think I mean
Yeah,
I think in
yeah,
the context of equal rights and responsibilities, that's kind of obvious to me anyway. I mean, we can discuss it as well, but no, more in terms of like what I'm really interested to learn more in detail. And of course, I spent some time in Rojava. What exactly is the ideology around women's emancipation here, and how does that or might that differ from ideas of feminism that are prevalent, for example, in Europe? But maybe Yushan, you might have something to say about this.
I think Danny is asking for like the genealogy things, like the ideology, the most important ideology now currently in Rojava. Of course, for women, of course, the genealogy, and so Jin means women in Kurdish, and so genealogy literally means the science of women, and it's not like it was not created now, so it has a long history. Like when we look back to the Kurdish women's movement, so because women has played a role in Kurdish movement since the last century, since 1970s, after the foundation of PKK especially. But for the moment when the PKK was founded, that was not the primary issue for women's liberation. Like, although there are two women in the founding members, but women question was not yet formally addressed during that time. So it is a little like, not a little, just like other national liberation movements. It was believed that during that time, women would gain their freedom in the course of anti-colonial struggle and nationalist struggle. Yeah, so, but after the struggle against the regimes, the conflict between the regime and the Kurdish society, the Turkish regime and the Kurdish society intensified, and then they needed mobilize more women to join the struggle to gain their rights in this society. So the women were more mobilized to join the military. So from the mid-1980s, Abdul Öcalan, the leader of PKK, he put a lot of intellectual labor into the ideological the creation of women's identity and the role within the movement. And during that time, they began to educate women the ideology of the party also. So they built the Mahson, the Kurkmans academic in the Beirut, in the Bekaa Valley. So during that time, especially during 1987 and 1993, the female, the women who joined in the party, who joined in the struggle, raised the percentage raised from 1% to about like 15 to 20, I think, percent. So, which is about 2,000 women fighters. And then because the increasing of the women, so they try to make the first attempt to build a women assembly and women army in 1993, but it failed because of there's still a lot of men with patriarchal thinkings, and they against this kind of decision. So they just again they interfere this decision, and they wanted to lift the ban on sexual relation and marriage. So that attempt was failed. But in 1995, the Free Women of Kurdistan Troop was finally established, and so they also during that time, Öcalan, he proposed the most important, one of the most important ideology of killing the dominant man during that time and to educate women. Also, the funding of this troop, the women-only troop, they made the practice, and they collected the experience also, and this experience also paved the way for current YPJ's establishment and the development. And so also I think on the 8th of March in 1998, women's liberation ideology declared by PKK has already emphasized the principle of protection of land and culture, free thought and free will. Women's autonomous organizations struggle against oppression, and also new standard of ethnic and ethics for women. So that is also the principle now for women to learn, and they were educated by this principle, and they should be a women like that now. So I think they put a lot of time to learn that and educate women to do so.
Yes, can I ask a question here, like to further define this? So you're saying, there is now a strong call for women-led initiatives here. Also, the whole process sounds like a long and kind of collective, partly organic development. Yet at the same time, there is conventionally this tendency to posit Öcalan as the inventor of genealogy, and there's a strong focus on his writing. I mean, how do these two things work against each other? And particularly, what are the other, who are, or what factions are the other inputs in this movement? Because very often, I think, in my perception, there's a lot of focus on Öcalan, but which doesn't maybe really acknowledge the sort of collective and more organic dimensions of this development.
Yeah, I think Kurdish women's movement, like since 1980s, it's not only like the up to bottom thing, it's also upside down. Like from the bottom, women do some movements by themselves as well, because how to say, Kurdish women also fought and go to political sides in prisons when they get caught, or also in their livelihood because of the state violence. They went on the street and become political actors by themselves. So they don't really, sometimes they don't really get political sides by the party, but only by themselves, because they want to ask for their rights, and they can't live in that situation, so they go to so they went to the street. So the simultaneous struggles in the activist, political and armed spheres taking place in the prison, villages, cities, and the mountains. This resistance shape a kind of militant feminities, and also shows the civilians, how the experience of these civilians, and combined with those political actors who whose
this is interesting. I think this is an interesting point we're arriving at again. So you mentioned before, and I would like to ask Jihan about this as well, but you mentioned before that in the 1980s maybe there was still a lot of resistance from majority of men, maybe even in the PKK, to acknowledge this position, to accept this position for women. Still, from my experience in Rojava, in day-to-day life, I do not have the impression that it is the perspectives on women's rights that are prevalent in, for example, YPG, are broadly shared, particularly among men in day-to-day society. So how can you say something about this, Jan? Because we've spoken about this before, right? Because within these structures, it seems very clear what the vision is for women's equality, and things seem to happen in that way. But outside those structures, just if you walk over the street in Karmislo or in a village or something, it's often there's a big contrast. How do these things relate to each other in your experience?
Yeah. Sorry, I was confused between the genealogy and the nation democratic. So, yeah, genealogy, ideology of genealogy, genealogy in terms, it's not new, but what is mentioned in Öcalan's book, it's different from genealogy that we know in science. So the genealogy is here is the science of women, and not just women should learn, also men, and should be, and it is being taught at schools now, secondary schools, and how much the people here or men are affected. Even women are not aware well, and have not learned it well, or you can find a lot of women until now haven't read the book of genealogy. Even we have it in Kurdish, in English, and in Arabic. I think we still need to be educated on this ideology of genealogy. It's very wide and deep, and need a lot of work, and we have to make courses for every single one should read and have courses and discussion about each term in this book. Um, I read some of this book. To me, I didn't read all the book, but I read some of the book. Yeah.
But also
but what you mean? Yeah.
There is, of course, a thing with reading the book and discussing it, right? That's one important pathway, potentially. But there might also be the pathway of seeing examples. And I'm wondering, do you feel that, I think everybody in Rojava, and probably also in other parts of Kurdistan, I would hope, are very aware that there are these empowered female military structures. Does this also have some effect, and if so, to what extent, on everyday life outside the armed forces? Do people think, because they see how important the role of WPG has been in the fight against ISIS, for example, does that change the way they see women in everyday life as well? And to what extent does that work or not work?
Yeah, maybe we think that there is not much change, but in contrast to the revolution, to the years before the revolution, 2010 and before 2011, or late to me, 2014, and now I started to realize and to know women rights and understand genealogy. But in contrast to before, I can see development. Actually, I can see. Before the revolution, you could see women at offices, but just the women like appearance, like body, but without mentality of discussion or making decision, of asking for rights, or even to have their own meeting, their own state within any institution, or any let's say a neighborhood, or even at within the family. Now the voice of daughters is louder than the voice of boys, because they understood, yeah, the reality of women and the power of women. How much this is the reality, but they didn't know before now.
Yeah.
But in the everyday life, yeah, if you don't make contrast between the before the revolution and now, you can say you can't see so much development, but we can realize some development. I think we need time.
And people who have served with WPG, I guess at some point they might retire. what do they do afterwards? Do you have some examples or experiences?
Yeah, one of my students, she joined YPG, and after that, she was member of the military council of my town. And after my town, you know, is invaded by Turkey, and we displaced here to Kamishlo. Few months ago, I heard that she got married and went to Europe. So it happened, yeah. Not every YPG. Maybe when they joined, they said that we're gonna fight to life because we need a lot of time. We need years. We need maybe century to gain our rights. Uh, uh, so it depends on in the person.
And you mentioned this one friend, she or a former student, she got married. What does that mean? Does she continue to work or not? Or
Which one? I no. This one went to Europe. There is
oh, to
some
Europe. Ah, okay.
yeah, to Europe. Yeah, one of my friends, when she fought 2015, and she lost one of her eyes, and she changed it. She changed her job. Now she's working uh, in youth board. Yeah, in Koban.
Yeah. So I guess there
So
are
it
some
depends.
examples. Yeah.
This friend I told you that she lost her eye and she changed her job. Also, when my friend's sister, she lost her eye and one of her finger, but still fighting. When we visited her at her office, and she insisted. The same thing to the stories of these YPG fighters. Last year, 2 years ago, 2020, I went to injured YPG or like disabled. So I met Dilawar. She lost one of her legs, and she changed her job and now working as logistic officer as a disabled. We what we mean Malagazia. And Rugesh, she broke her back and now she can't walk well, but still uh, member of YPG. And
Hmm.
whenever there is fight, she fights.
And how do the men, particularly in their environments, in their families or in their neighborhoods, how do they respond to these women coming back from the military? Are they highly respected? Do they think, that it
Sure,
wasn't a good
sure. They
idea?
are
Or
respected. Yeah, yeah. They are respected by most of people, but we still have some cases. No, those with radical mindset, those men who don't accept such. But those men, they don't just not just they don't accept the women to fight. They even don't accept women to go out or work or even to be actor. As I told you, whatever they do, they don't accept. So those who accept women to work or to get high positions, they accept and respect a lot the fighter. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
also we have some one of the fighters told me that her father at first didn't let her to join, but then he was convinced because when he saw the funeral, when the killed fighter came and all people go inferno, and he was so impressed by this, and then let his daughter join. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Wow. So these
they
are
are
some
being changed.
examples of, yeah.
Yeah, they are
So
being changed.
yeah. Yeah, so this is good to hear. So here are some examples how these military structures start to affect the way people think in everyday life. I'm very interested to hear, because I know, Yushan, you know quite a bit about leftist structures in Europe. who keep a very close eye on Rojava, who support the revolution. I'd be very interested to hear some of your perspectives on how you see that these units affect the way some people, women or men in Europe, particularly in activist circles, change the way they think about feminism and equality on the basis of that.
Actually, I'm not very familiar with that, but
Ah.
I really really met some people here in Europe, in France. So these people, they actually, I think they show a very, as I researched, as my research topic, they also show a very romanticized imagination toward these soldiers, the YPG soldiers, because they think they are not only the symbol of women's freedom movement, but also the women, not only the women freedom movement against the patriarchal structures, but also combat with the fascism, Turkish fascism. And every time they shouted with the Kurdish people with the slogan of against the Turkish fascism or something like that. When these leftist groups, they support Rojava Revolution, I think they don't really, as the people I met, so they don't really understand the real situation, like the Jihan mentioned, those examples, but they more treat it's as like a symbol. So we should have this kind of international solidarity. We should we should fight against the fascism. So even when I was in the youth camp in Europe, when they teach about when they taught the genealogy in the camp, or when they talked about the gender issue, some men even still they don't understand the situation sometimes. I think
What do you mean by that? But they don't understand the situation.
Yeah, because there was something happens in the camp, so it's most like the queer people, they talk about their problem in the camp, but male people, so men in that camp, they just ask me why they have this kind of problem. I don't understand. And yeah, I think, and also there was a very patriarchal thinking, because there was one man saying that why you teach this to us, because they think they are making the Kurdish ideology brainwash, because why you teach this, why you push this ideology to us. So it was like when you choose to join this camp, educational camp, but you don't want to hear a different idea of Kurdish people, you think this is ideology brainwash.
What different idea you mean then? Different from what?
They think it's so.
And who are we talking about? Who are the they here? Are they
so yeah
Kurdish people who live in Europe, or are they European activists?
European activists I met in the educational camp in France. So,
and an educational camp of what? Or for what?
International, that was held by the International Communes of Rojava. So it was held by Kurdish people. It was a camp to supporting Kurdish movements, but it still have some. I think it's because they don't really see the situation, and they think, so the people join the camp. The people join the camp, they always think the ideology of democratic federalism is perfect. So there will never happen problems. There will not, and they don't really have how to say, like when Jihan said when they get hurt, they still fight, because they think that is their movement, so they need to fight. But I think sometimes people here, they don't they don't understand the revolution is still going on. It's not perfect. So I think people should so I think the web pages fighting should make them understand more the revolution is still going on. It's not perfect. The ideology is not perfect. It's still need to be improved. And I don't know. I
guess
it's a little messy.
I guess
understood you.
I guess what I'm hearing from your analysis of this particular experience is, it seems that there's a kind of a belief that this concept of the revolution is a kind of a magic fix, right?
Yeah, it's
and
also
European
utopian in Rojava, like it's a perfect institution there.
Yeah, and I'm interested in that you mentioned people who identify as queer. I mean, how does that fit in, right? Because it seems, and I think there's like multiple elephants in the room here, right? I think one thing is that the genealogy of the revolution is a very strongly binary idea, right? There's men and there's women, and they're all straight. Or at least there's no talking about something else. How and I think this is like a follow-on question for you. I think that the sense I have is, and I myself, I support the revolution. Many people in Europe who are part of this, you could call it scene or group, who support revolution, they do not share those kind of binary ideas of gender, right? For me, I would say, I mean, freedom means that people can choose themselves what sexual identity they want to have. How do these? What are your perceptions of this? How do people negotiate that, right? Because on the one hand, there is belief the Rojava Revolution is a perfect, ideal thing, and on the other hand, many people I know who have that sort of idea, they have certain beliefs that don't fit in. How does that work?
I think they made a very smart negotiation here in Europe. Like maybe they don't say that in Rojava or in the Middle East, but they talk about that a lot when they do the propaganda or when they do the movement in Europe. They will say something about like queers, right? But what happened in the camp I joined, it was very interesting because the queer was in the part of women. So there was like they divided us into different communes, and the queer are divided into women's commune, and the men are separately. And that rose the questions and problems because they are some of them are non-binary, so they don't want to be divided into these binary situations. So that caused problems, but they try to negotiate a lot about that. So they have a lot of meetings to negotiate that, but since it's not very successful. But I think when they want to educate people here in Europe, they try to use a way that European people can accept, but they still explore this way. So like they try to come up with some idea like to divide the queer into women, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, but I'm kind of particularly interested in, and we won't find, I mean, I don't know, you are doing your PhD research on this, so you might have come across it. I mean, I have some personal experiences of people who do this or that, but you need to negotiate that somehow personally. If you say, I support the revolution, but at the same time, there are things that I don't agree with or I don't feel comfortable with. We are reaching 7 already. I don't know if we can accept questions from the audience. If we can, Mantas, maybe
we have enough audience?
I don't know. I don't even know if we have audience. It doesn't matter. I think there is the last one. I think there is this other, like one thing I think is this idea that in Europe a certain idealization of emancipation and the revolution. At the same time, I think there is often a kind of challenge between the ideals of these structures and day-to-day life in Rojava.
Yeah.
I think another difficult issue for me, at least, is that there is a strong sense, I find, of idealizing militarization in this, right? If we think about, I think it's fair to say that if we think about women's rights in Rojava, one of the first things that pops up is women with guns. And my kind of rhetorical but not entirely question is this not contradictory with the very principle of anarchist socialism? Because to me, the idea that women's liberation, among others, is kind of focused in a military structure, that almost sounds proto-fascist to me, right? I mean, I hope you disagree, but what do you think about that?
But do you think the stereotype of this women's liberation movement related to Rojava, the first thing we come into mind is the militant perspective? Is that because of the Rojava, or it is because of the Western media? So because it shows too much of that to us.
Good question. Good. I think this is also a very fair point, because I would say that from my experience of being in Rojava, the sort of, and it's not only the spectacularization of military violence, there's also a strong kind of sexualization component in it, right? Like these all really attractive female fighters.
Yeah.
In my personal experience, at least, and I've been able to be in both places in a privileged way, is that doesn't play so much, or maybe hardly in Rojava. So I think, there is a Western component in this. Still, the question remains then, because it's especially in kind of European pro-Rojava circles where this sort of thing also plays a role, right? And I don't mean proto-fascist here in like blatantly idealizing violence as a thing in itself, but more kind of an implicit thing, right? Because if you start thinking that these structures are a very effective way to drive emancipation, then you almost come to this, what Ernst Jünger, and I mentioned this in our chat before, right? Ernst Jünger, this proto-fascist right-wing sociologist in Germany, said in the Interbellum, what we should strive for is total mobilization, because only the experience of the military can get people over this sort of the uptight bourgeois terrible society. And I kind of feel a bit uncomfortable that here it seems that it has a sort of similar flavor in a way.
But when you think back, like when you look back to history, the Kurdish people, they tried in different way, like political way in Turkey, like they tried a lot of different ways instead of only military way, but like they failed. They don't really get success.
No, but of course I'm playing the devil's advocate here, right? Because at the same time, I have this clear sense that the approach to military service and military activity as part of the revolution is clearly rooted in a sense of self-defense and not any sort of territorial or sort of conflict for their own sake. But there is a slight thing with that, I do find. Are you still there, Jihan? Do you have any comments on that? Maybe especially on what I said before. That's my sense, but you have a lot more experience with that. That yes, there is a lot of military stuff in Rojava, but at the same time, I don't have the sense that it is this sort of, there is not an excitement about the military as an adventure very much, but maybe I'm wrong about that, and maybe I'm generalizing. Like, what's your perspective on this? Oh, we can't hear you now.
You should unmute yourself.
Oh, you see, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. I think you're not wrong. You're right somehow. Yeah. But at the same time, look, in the ideology or in Öcalan's book, so you can see that he mentioned that we will not to keep like with military or fighting all our life. whenever we apply this ideology and we gain the equality with men, not just even men. To my perspective, I think all even in the mentioned in Ocalan's book that men also should be educated on the ideology of genealogy and to know. Until now, you can find a lot of men say we don't understand this genealogy, we don't understand this ideology. Even they read, even they receive education, but still need to be I don't know, maybe repeated, maybe discussed well, maybe studied, being researched to get a well. Just I have one comment on this Kurdish ideology. Genealogy is not Kurdish ideology. It's ideology for every single woman, or let's say every single person. I remember in the education of genealogy lesson when we received, our professor asked us, what do you think the ideology of genealogy will be applied on the women of European women, or the Middle East women who some of my colleagues said, of course, we, as it is our or emerged from Middle. My answer was no. I said European women will react and apply this and receive this, accept this ideology better than us because they gain some freedom. They are free in some sectors better than us. So this is what I wanted to mention, that this ideology is for all the world, not just the Kurdish people.
This is a very good end, I think, and it's also exactly 7 o'clock. So thank you for that. All right, great. I think we will say goodbye. There were no conclusions. Well, that was never the intention. I hope those who listened got something out of it. At least for me, it was very interesting to once more talk to you. Good. I wish you a good rest of the evening, and thanks again to Yushan and Jihan. And thanks to the National Museum, of course. As far as I'm aware, I think the exhibition is still going for another 3 or 4 days. So we cannot go, but if you are in the surroundings, please do go and see women warriors in the Lithuanian National Museum. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.